Let's talk about it. Here with us, MCC Global Enterprise CEO Michelle Caruso-Cabrera. It's a good question. People watching, well, it's sad for them. Why do they care?
Well, government borrowing is going up all over the world because governments,
at the same time,
because governments all over the world have been spending more than they take in when it comes to revenue. And at some point, it comes home to roost. And while we have issues in the United States, and a lot of people are justifiably very concerned about our levels of debt, we look like amateurs when you look at what's happening in places like France, which have far less flexibility than we do, right? They can't print their way out of their problem because they have the euro and they don't have an independent central bank that controls only their currency, right? They're really constrained. The UK doesn't have the world's reserve currency. And so as a result, they could, at a worst case scenario, face some kind of run on the currency. The pound dropped dramatically yesterday because of those concerns. So how does that impact the average American? When we saw the Greek debt crisis, which would be tiny, tiny, tiny compared to a French debt crisis, banks across Europe almost shut down. I mean, it was very dramatic.
Here's what's crazy. You and I were both in Athens at Syntagma Square.
Yes, you were at Brand X at the time.
Yes, I was at a different network, and people were throwing bottles with Molotov cocktails in the banks. Greece is doing better, I think, than many other nations in, quote, mainstream Europe now.
Oh, yeah, their debt trades better than France now because they've done so many reforms in the subsequent 10 years. But that crisis is an example of what can happen. We woke up in Athens one morning and the elderly found out that their pensions had been cut by 30% overnight, that they were going to go from 1,500 euros to 1,000 euros a month, something like that. That may not be exact, but that's directionally what happened. And when countries don't control their spending, that can happen. As somebody has to eventually pay for it. You got to print it or you got to cut spending in really painful ways. So, and that's what makes this government shutdown issue right now particularly thorny, right? Because you have two things that are different this time around. The U.S. government's costs for borrowing are rising. So that means it's more and more expensive and it takes more and more of the government budget to pay. Now is more than Medicare and also defense spending to pay our interest. Okay, that's a lot. At the same time, it could be that the government has far less revenue than they expected because of this appeals court that said that a lot of the tariffs are not legal, and that was bringing in a lot of money. So this budget situation is a little more thorny than usual. Usually, the government shutdown story, I think, is like the boy who cried wolf. Over and over again, we hear about it, and I'm guessing that's.
But I think he got eaten at the end, didn't he? Didn't he eventually die?
That's
like
true.
the wolf killed him.
That's true.
So he was a wolf, and everyone ignored him.
Let's hope it's not
but then he
this time.
actually was eaten. So we don't want that. I mean, I get your point. Listen, this government for 10 years, we've been almost every year, minus I think COVID, talking about this potential government shutdown. But to your point now, this is not those times because the numbers are a lot bigger. We spent trillions and trillions and trillions during COVID, and much of that was not on COVID. It was just kind of lumped in as like, oh, let's do this and this and this now. But unless we're going for, and I want everybody out there to mute their radios. We're going to have higher taxes for everybody, are we not? Because taxes on a small group of people is not going to work out. The numbers don't work out. We're going to have middle-class tax hikes if something doesn't get fixed.
Well, there are other options, right? You can cut spending.
Can you?
Yes. I mean,
85 or whatever percent is it's already like in law.
You're talking about mandated benefits.
Yes, you can't say, I'm cutting Social Security. Whoa.
Right. That's the worst case scenario.
Because grandma in Greece will throw a bottle through a bank.
Politically, that's the worst case scenario, for sure. But in worst case scenario, that is what happens. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. You can cut spending. You can grow your way out of it. If the economy grows fast enough, you can absolutely. We are in a much better position than many of those other countries to grow our way out of it if we can get our act together.